I have a friend who has a really good eye for fashion. And anytime I give her a compliment on something that she's wearing, she'll often look down, probably to remember or recall what she's wearing, and say, oh, I got this on sale, or ooh, it doesn't really fit me, or oh, it's so old. And so one day I decided to bring it to her attention, and I said, did you know that every time I offer you a compliment, you invalidate it? And what's funny, because her gut instinct was to apologize to me and say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to invalidate you. And I tried to explain to her, no, you're really invalidating yourself and not trusting your instinct. And I feel like we've all experienced this in some capacity. And so I told her one day, I said, you know, you can just say, thank you. And it was funny that thank you was really the farthest thing from her mind. I share this story both because I think it's something that's very relatable. We've all either done it or experienced it. But more than that, this response to a compliment is often because of something we feel in our heart and ignore it or cast aside. You see, when we receive a compliment and say thank you, we validate ourselves as having good taste or acknowledging that someone appreciates something we're doing. To put it more plainly, we feel comfortable enough in our skin to recognize that what we did is good enough. Human beings are complex creatures. We are so much more than the thoughts that happen in our minds. We use our heart to make decisions, even if our minds say the exact opposite. The Jewish approach to living life is a holistic one, where our minds and hearts and soul fuse together and work in tandem. And I've always loved that Jews wear phylacteries or tefillin. Those are the leather boxes that we wear on our arm and our head. It's meant to draw a closeness between our head and our hearts and create a connection between the two. Human beings, like animals, are primed for fight, flight, or sometimes a freeze response to any stress or adversity life throws our way. And our job on this earth is to move away from this jungle-esque approach to the world and fully understand why we respond the way that we do. Meaning, our fears have changed over time. We're no longer afraid of being eaten by large animals like we were thousands of years ago, and if you are afraid of being eaten by large animals, you should move. Our fears are intellectual and emotional ones, and learning how to deal with them head-on without running away or being concerned is really a skill like anything else. The way we interact with each other today does not always make that so simple. When we encounter certain challenges, we sometimes get pulled into these situations and we're consumed by it, and sometimes we completely break down. And this is partially because we don't have a strong enough foundation or base to rely on. Sometimes even the smallest challenges can throw us off kilter completely, and we find ourselves asking the questions, why is this getting to me so much? Maybe somebody honked their horn at you while they were driving, or said something hurtful, or maybe you feel embarrassed in a certain situation and didn't know how to overcome that fear. And today I don't want to dwell on the fear itself. On this Rosh Hashana evening, I really just want to share one important message with all of you, of all ages, sizes, and colors. And the message is very simple. You are more than enough. We're living in a fast-paced world we've never lived in. With social media, television, and the incredible technology that we've developed to stay connected and transfer information, word gets out fast. News, updates, the latest trend can get circulated around the entire globe in just seconds. And the speedy transference that we're experiencing these days can sometimes rattle our minds and play a negative role in the way that we perceive the world. It makes it easy for us to create alternative realities or standards that are not only impossible to meet, but are often absurd. And we somehow, within seconds, have to make the decision of whether we want to buy into the idea that we've just seen or read or heard, or move on just as quickly to the next update. It's overwhelming. So what do we have to do to remove all the noise, the distraction that is harmful to us? And is that even possible these days with the entire world at our fingertips, literally? A woman recently came into my office for pastoral care. She said she was having great difficulty with her mother. This woman shared that her mom was not really the loving type, and it sometimes frustrated her and made her feel unseen. As our conversation progressed, she told me a story that was half crying, half laughing. She says, "My mom is a shopaholic. She buys so many clothes, even when she can't afford all of them. And it's not even about the money," she says. "It's that she returns so many of the clothes. And she does this so often that the people at Nordstrom Rack know her by name. She returns clothes so often that she's become somewhat embarrassed. And it's gotten so bad that she sometimes asks my brother and I to do the returns for her. But I never do," she said. And one time, she drove 3 hours just to get to another Nordstrom Rack and make the return there because they wouldn't recognize her. We shared a little laugh together, but I know this woman was hurting. So I looked at her and I said, "Well, that makes a lot of sense." And the woman looked at me like I was crazy, and she said, "What do you mean that makes a lot of sense? That's crazy." I then asked this woman, was her mother's upbringing turbulent or difficult? Did she have a tough relationship with her mother or her family, perhaps? And the woman said, "Yes. How did you know?" And I explained to her that people always do things for a reason. They always have, and they always will. Every behavior tells us something about the person's life. The woman shared with me that her mother grew up with wealthy siblings, but she was not, and felt that she couldn't always keep up, and she never felt good enough. We see this all the time. It's hard not to compare ourselves to others, but measuring success does not depend on what our neighbor, friends, or family is doing. No, our measurement of success should be a personal gauge that we have with ourselves and no one else. The minute we begin to compare ourselves to others, we will never be successful because no two lives in this world are identical. Each person is unique in this world with their own sense of unique circumstances. No two lives are exactly alike. So we need to have our own compass guiding us, our own set of measurements to dictate whether we are thriving. And we are each defined by our own experiences. So it's important that we learn which experiences in our life to hang on to and to build upon, and which experiences to learn from and then let go of. Sometimes we hang on to the experiences that hurt our hearts, and we forget how valuable and wonderful we are. And the reality is there are so many people who carry their pain on their sleeves and deal with that pain by being unkind to others. And we see this in our schools, with people who bully others. We saw it last year, where kids drew a swastika on their leg, not thinking this would be painful to others. And I later learned from you, our amazing teens, that this is not unusual in your schools, and that sometimes sports teams can use harmful language, and it's really unacceptable. And as Jews, we hold ourselves to high standards of behavior and action. We gather as a community each week on Shabbat, holidays, and participate in Tikkun Olam, the repairing of the world, not just to leave a more beautiful and peaceful place for the next generation, but to repair ourselves. Tikkun HaNefesh, to repair our souls. To make our world a better place, we must first make ourselves better. None of us are perfect, nor will we ever have that burden, thankfully. The goal is not perfection. The goal is the process of working on ourselves to always be and feel good enough. And good enough does not mean mediocre. Good enough means holding ourselves to the highest standards of betterment and taking steps towards that goal. One of the most amazing and incredible parts of our tradition is that no one in our Torah or Jewish text is perfect. And actually, the opposite is true. Every single one in our shared collective memory is imperfect. Our forefather Moses was one of the most important leaders, albeit his fears of not being good enough. When God calls to Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses asks God, "Why are you choosing me? I am heavy-tongued. I have difficulty speaking. I can't lead the Israelites out of Egypt. They're never going to listen to me." But God says that he's the perfect leader and that Aaron, his brother, will help him speak on his behalf if necessary. When God tells Sarah she will become a mother in the later stages of her life, she laughs. She says, "I can't be a mother now, I'm too old." There was a sense of disbelief in herself. There are moments in our tradition where a sense of inner misdirection leads to horrible acts like murder. Our first siblings, Cain and Abel, from the book of Genesis. Cain was jealous of his brother Abel's sacrifices to God, and so he kills him because of his own internal struggles. Our internal pain and sense of not feeling good enough can lead us to dark places and sometimes even to horrific acts. Rosh Hashana is our new year. It is a renewed beginning for us, a new starting point where we get to evaluate ourselves and work to become better. It's a cyclical beginning. We do this individually and as a congregational family, so we do not have to do this work on our own. It is important that each and every new beginning starts with building good habits. And the first is to remind ourselves that we are good enough, capable enough, strong enough, thoughtful enough to believe in ourselves and allow our actions to lead to greatness in our futures. In this way, we build a strong sense of self where we don't constantly feel in competition and can't be content with who we are and what we have. Rather than seeking outer significance and validation, we can, as Dr. Shirley Regev says, insource it. As we enter this new year, I hope we each find the courage to appreciate ourselves and honor what we have to offer the world as compared only to ourselves. I hope each and every one of us is brave enough to create our own standards of greatness and find meaning and joy in the process of becoming our future selves. I wish you all a Shana Tova, a happy, joyous, and healthy new year. Chag Sameach.